Good morning, African Confessions. I am back with another episode. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and the message reads like this. Hello, brother, how are you? I want to confess that I have sacrificed my whole family. I sacrificed my whole family simply because I wanted to be rich. I was someone who was hardworking, but it all happened. Maybe this was just my destiny. There was no escape from this. I ended up being a ritualist, and I never thought that I was going to be a ritualist. The only person that I cannot sacrifice, it is my younger sister. I have tried to sacrifice her several times, but I have failed to sacrifice my younger sister. The reason why I cannot sacrifice her, it is because she is a very prayerful warrior. No matter what I try to do, sometimes when I try to sacrifice her, I'll find out that she will be covered in flames. There are times when I have tried to sacrifice her. Instead, I will see a lion standing in front of me. Whenever I would try to visit her room spiritually so that I can sleep with her, to become a spiritual husband, so as to weaken her flesh, I would get lost. I don't know how I would get lost. I would wake up in my room, in my spiritual body. Then I would go to the place where my sister was staying. At that time, she was staying in South Africa. Like if I was in Lusaka, and if I wake up and I want to go and attack her, I would find myself maybe in Cape Town, but not in my physical body. I would try to locate her in the spiritual realm, but I will never be able to locate her. I tried to do this several times, but whenever I would have located her, I'll then wake up and see I'll be in the wrong place. Then I had to travel back to my place. This is how it all started. I was working in the construction company when one day the man whom we were building his house, when I was working for that construction company, he then told me that he trusted me enough and he wanted me to stay at his house because his house, it was near completion. The problem that he was facing is that whenever we would knock off and go home, there were thieves that kept on robbing the place. The house was not yet completed. So what these thieves were doing, that house that we were building, it was the first of the few houses that I saw back in those days that had aluminium doors and windows. So those thieves were coming to steal all of the aluminium. I don't know how many times we had to replace the aluminium window frames and the aluminium door frames. At that time, very few houses that were being built had aluminium doors and windows. So I suspected that those people who came to strip off the aluminium from the house, they were going to sell the aluminium that they would have stripped from that house to those people who buy scrap metal. When that man gave me that job opportunity to work as his security, I was really happy because the boss that I was working for in that construction company, one day he told me that if you work very hard, this man, I heard him saying that he likes you a lot and he wants you to get a driver's license so that you can work for him, working for them as their personal driver, taking his kids to school and fetching them later on when they would have knocked off from school. At that time, that man, his kids were still very young and he was really rich. So when that man gave me this job opportunity, I was glad because to me, it meant double the salary. After the construction of the house was completed, this man was now preparing to move into his house with his family. At that time, I was almost working like a gardener, but there was a promise that I was supposed to get my license so that I can become their family driver. He is the one who was teaching me how to drive. With everything that he was doing for me, I could see that my boss was indeed a good man. Most of the times during the day, what I'll do is that I'll be planting lawn and some flowers as he had directed me to do. But I remember one night I was really tired, so I went to bed very early. But when I went to bed, there was something strange that kept on happening to me. When I would sleep, I would just wake up. I just thought that since I was very tired, maybe that was the reason why it was really difficult for me to sleep without any disturbances. When I was asleep like that, that is when I heard a very strange sound. This strange sound that I had heard was coming from the front of the house, so I thought that it was those thieves again. I woke up and I sent my boss an SMS, and I gently walked towards the direction where this strange sound was coming from. But to my shock, I was really shocked, my brother, because what I saw, it was my boss. He was standing in front of the house, but he was naked. He was not alone, but he was with two other men. Those men, they were busy digging a very big hole. They were digging this big hole in the middle of the front yard. Those men were all wearing black gowns. It was only my boss who was naked, and in his hands he was holding something that looked like a human head. But I am not really sure if this is what I saw, because it was in the evening, but we had already installed electricity on the house, so I could see everything because of the outdoor lights they were on. When I saw this, I knew that this was a ritual that was being performed, and I was really scared. I didn't want anything to do with rituals, let alone work for someone who was a ritualist. So I decided to turn back, to go back to that back room where I was staying. All that I wanted to do was to go back and get my clothes, jump the Jura wall, and run away with my life. But after I had finished packing, when I opened the door, when I wanted to run away, I saw that those men, including my boss, they were standing in front of me. Then one of those men, he was really a strong guy. He grabbed me, they kidnapped me, then they forced me to continue digging that hole. I dug that hole throughout the night until I was waist deep in that hole. When I finished, it was around 1 a.m. I was really feeling cold. They then threw me into my boss's car. Then my boss drove the car, but he was driving that car whilst he was naked. He drove the car into the forest. Then they pulled me out of the car. My boss then instructed those men to harvest my genitals and my heart. But I started crying when I heard my boss giving those men the instruction that they had to cut off my manhood and my testicles and my heart. I cried so much. Then I started begging my boss not to kill me. When I was begging for mercy, I asked my boss to sacrifice my father in exchange of my life. I just thought that this was just a way of pleading with him. When I told him that he should sacrifice my father in exchange of my life, my boss laughed and he said, "Well, we will try." Those men then threw me back into my boss's car. I stayed locked in an unknown location for 2 weeks until his witch doctor came. When he came, that is when he started bathing me with some medicines, but those medicines were really strong. Those medicines were like acid. They burnt my skin. Even today, I still have those burn marks on my back. After that, that is when I sacrificed my father. That witch doctor made my father to appear before me. Then he gave me a knife to harvest his heart. I did this, and after I had harvested my father's heart, that witch doctor went to the place where the spirit of my father was lying down. Then he took that heart and he placed it inside a clay pot, and he said, "Go now and attend your father's funeral and become rich." My boss drove me back to Ndola, and indeed my father had died. He was found dead in his bed, but my father, when they found him dead in his bed, he was bleeding from the mouth, the nose, and the ears. After my father was buried, I moved to Lusaka, and whilst I was on the bus, a man just entered onto this bus. This was when we were still boarding the bus to Lusaka. That man just entered onto that bus. Then he gave me a plastic bag and he said, "Open this when you are alone." Then he got out of the bus. This shocked me so much. Then, when I had arrived to my destination, I opened that plastic bag and I saw that inside it had new money. I started using that money, but if I would buy a car, when I would return back to the place where I was staying at that time, I would find out that all the money that I would have used on that day, it would have come back to me. So I started buying those rigid trucks to transport wooden poles. After 2 years, that is when I started having a lot of dreams. This was after the money that was inside that plastic bag had run out. When I looked into that plastic bag and I saw that there was no money, then those dreams started coming to me. In my dreams, I was told that I had to sacrifice my mother. So the way that I did this ritual is that I lit a candle, and when that candle stopped burning, that is when one of my family member will die. I did this to my mother, then the rest of my family. Whenever a family member dies, I would see that the plastic bag would be full of money. It so happened that there was an economic crisis in Zambia at that time, and a lot of my relatives were migrating to South Africa, but still they returned back home, but not alive, because when I was back home, I kept on doing those rituals, and those rituals would follow them to South Africa. Most of them, they died in South Africa. Then their bodies had to be repatriated back to Zambia. 2 of my brothers were truck drivers, but I caused them to have accidents and they died. But my sister, who was in Joburg, I failed her. I tried everything that I could do so as to perform this ritual. I tried everything to sacrifice her, but she is the thorn that is in my flesh, and I have failed to remove this thorn that is in my flesh. There was a particular point in time that I even got help from another man who was a witch doctor, but he was in that local area in which my sister was staying. But still, even though we had done this combination so as to bring my sister down, but we failed, that man even ended up sacrificing his own wife. Because when that man, when he was helping me, that is when my sister did a very dangerous prayer, and that local witch doctor every evening by his tokoloshi, because it was angry because he had gotten himself involved in matters that were not his. So he offered his wife as a sacrifice so that his tokoloshi can stop beating him. Dear listeners, right there was a message that I received. It was sent to me via Facebook Messenger by one of our listeners. Quite a strange story. Please let us talk about this issue in the comment section.